Welcome to the Men of Iron podcast, equipping men for their mentorship journey. The purpose of the podcast is to provide you with discussion and practical advice to help you grow in your faith, family, friends, fitness, and finances. Thanks for listening.
Welcome to the Men of Iron podcast. It's Steve and Justin back at it live from Supply. J-Dub.
It's 2020.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
2020. That just sounds crazy.
It's going to be a year of clear focus and vision.
Is that
That's my joke. It's real. Get it? Because it's 2020.
Now I get it. I actually didn't get it right away.
Yeah. It's clear and focused vision.
I like it. Well, actually, my word for the year is focus, and I didn't even really try that. So, hey.
Wow.
Amazing.
You are laser focused on your vision. 2020.
Oh, man. So what's going on? How was your Christmas and holiday season?
It was good. It was really good. A lot of really good family time. And honest, candidly, it was also awful because we had some sickness in the house. We had like a week of passing along, being sick to one another. So family sharing. And then just kids, you know, they do say, they joke growing up, the parents want the kids to go back to school. I can attest that that is also how we genuinely feel. And my wife especially was like, all right, it's time for school to happen again.
Ready to send them back.
Yeah. So it was awesome. We had a great, overall, fantastic time. But it was long enough.
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously, Ashley and I, we just have Pearl, one daughter who's in preschool, but Ashley was ready to get her back into preschool, but that's not, the holiday season was over.
Pearl is too precious.
She's too precious.
But that's from Daddy, because I know she's got
exactly.
you wrapped around.
She does no wrong on my side of the coin. So, well, J-Dub, let's start with celebrate the wins. What do you got for us?
Yeah, I think I'm just gonna literally. There's a win to celebrate. It's been fun to watch my son Jansen. He's 9 years old. Really just come alive playing basketball. This year, he was a second grader playing up on a third and fourth grade team last year and was just super timid. Just like he'd get the ball and just like literally just like elbows out, hold it, and you know, just no aggressiveness. And this year he's just like come out of his shell like crazy. And so like Saturday they had a huge game, went probably against the other better team in the league that they're playing in, and it came down. They won 46-45.
Wow.
Jansen had 16 points, 4 rebounds, not that I'm counting, and like him and another kid had the key defensive stop within 10 seconds to get the ball back and secure the win. It was just.
So you're are you the dad out there with the stat sheet, making sure you got every stat down?
Like I should pass deflections, like assists. I should start counting everything, but.
Yeah. What's his plus minus on the court? Do you have that?
I should look. That's a good. I need to start measuring that. That's a good point.
Well, I've seen a couple videos you posted on Facebook. Man, he's got some skills.
He's got a left hand. He can dribble. He was hitting like mid range. He's shooting better than Ben Simmons. I can confidently say that he's a better mid range. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome, man. For myself, as far as celebrating the wins here in the past couple weeks, I would say that this past weekend, just the weather, man.
Yeah.
Unseasonable for January in the Northeast, but I mean, this past Sunday it was in the 60s. Crazy. And pretty much I feel like everybody was outside. Yeah. Like, it was just cool. Like, it got me really excited for spring, but also sad because it's only January. So
far away. It's such a tease. Like, oh, it's coming around.
I know.
We haven't even had like real snow yet. I mean, we had a couple. We had that one was decent snow, but we haven't gotten slammed yet.
Which is probably coming. I don't know. But yeah, we had our windows open. We were outside going for walks and playground, and it was a blast.
That's awesome.
Well, I love it, J-Dub. Today's episode 46, we are talking about finding your protege. So just to give a little clarification to what we're talking about today, as an organization, we've kind of, I'd say in the past maybe year and a half, we've kind of evolved into this approach for men. And in the history of Men of Iron, a lot of times we've partnered with churches. The churches have sign-ups. You know, they'll get, whether it's 10 mentors, 10 proteges, and they'll essentially pair them up blindly almost. I mean, there's a lot of prayer and stuff that goes into it, but a lot of times these guys are coming into a mentorship and they've never met each other. So what we've identified, I guess, over the last year is this idea of mentors finding somebody in their life, whether it's a family member, friend, coworker, that they want to pour into and invest into. Because a lot of times these men already have guys like that in their lives. They're just not intentionally pouring into them through a mentorship. So this episode is built around that premise and helping guys understand why we believe in this and kind of how to do it as well, how to seek out that guy. And even on the flip side, and we'll talk about this as well, as on the flip side is the protege or a young man or whoever seeking out somebody to mentor them. So we'll discuss that as well. And just kind of getting into it, about the why as far as Men of Iron, we believe it's a biblical approach. I mean, you look at the life of Jesus and how he intentionally invested in 12 men in his life, and it wasn't just a simple process, I'm sure. We know that Jesus most likely spent a lot of time in prayer and solitude and time with God, intentionally choosing these 12 men who he was going to pour into for the next 2.5, 3 years of his ministry. So that's first and foremost why we kind of believe in this process. And you look at even the life of Paul and pouring into guys like Timothy in Acts 16:3. It says Paul wanted to take Timothy along on the journey. So Paul recognized the importance of equipping a successor to kind of carry on that gospel of Jesus into the new church.
Yeah, you see it a lot where New Testament that discipleship happens where Jesus is inviting and choosing, determining these are the guys, this is an individual I want to pour into. And, like you mentioned, Paul seeing something in Timothy, and you can read more even about that in that passage in Acts where he saw, I see your faith, I see the legacy that your mother and your history has created you to be, and I want you to come with me to be invested in this together. So that intentional choice is a big part of why we think this is the way to go, rather than just throwing a dart at a board of random individuals. Being intentional about who you're pouring into, and like you said earlier, conversely, if you're going, man, I need to find a mentor. I think this same approach applies. Thinking intentionally about who you know and who you're already connected to find that mentorship relationship.
Yeah, we've seen it. We've seen the success of that firsthand here at Men of Iron through one of our community models locally, Mannheim Strong 27. When we first got this community initiative off the ground, it was identifying, I forget how many guys the first year, but identifying, let's say, 10 mentors, strong guys in the community, strong leaders in the community who we believe would be great mentors. And then we charge those guys with going out and finding their protege. And I think we've seen a great deal of success through that process. And I think another point we can make here as far as finding your proteges, there's plenty of men out there who have so much of a positive and great influence to give and to kind of pass on and to pour into another guy, but they're not stewarding that very well. They're either not involved actively in mentorships or investing in men kind of a couple seasons behind them. But I think men need to understand the significance of your influence, whether it's your family, your friends, your coworkers. We all have a circle of influence. Some guys think because they're not they're not running a corporation or they're not, a manager or supervisor, that their influence, or maybe they think they don't have influence or their influence is small, but there's everybody. I mean, we all have a circle of influence. So I think it's kind of understanding the significance of your influence and how to steward that well.
Yeah, we were just talking about this yesterday actually at church, that we're all being discipled and we're all discipling people around us, whether we want to or not. There's always who we are is we're bringing that influence into everything that we're doing. And so the question is whether you're being intentional about what you are discipling and who you are discipling and how you are being influenced by others around you. And I think that's a big deal, because we're doing it. You're doing it no matter what. You have that influence no matter what. It's whether or not you want to be channeling it towards a intentional purpose.
Right. Yeah, and I think we'll talk about this after the break, but I think it's an intimidation factor or even a fear factor for a lot of guys in mentorship in general, is they don't they're kind of afraid to get out of their comfort zone, and maybe they don't have authentic and intimate relationships with other men, so they're kind of afraid to take that first step, and they don't know what it looks like. So I think after the break, we will give guys some practical advice, like who do I invite and kind of how to do it.
Great.
All right, see you on the other side. Hey guys, we want to take a minute to thank our friends at Miller's Twist for sponsoring this episode. Miller's Twist is located at Reading Terminal Market in downtown Philadelphia, one of America's largest and oldest public markets. Miller's Twist soft pretzels are the soft, buttery, amish-style pretzels that will keep you coming back for more. Voted best soft pretzel in Philly, Miller's Twist also serves the Philly cheesesteak pretzel log, breakfast and lunch items, ice cream, and much more. Go to millerstwist.com for the full menu.
What's going on, Men of Iron? This is MJ Salvatore from Connecticut, here for your Mentor Minute for today. I don't know where any of you guys find yourselves, or if you're questioning whether or not your investment in somebody else matters, but I want to tell you today that it does. If you have a story, if you've overcome a hardship, if you have fought through a trial, if you have broken through adversity and come out on the other side, that story matters. That wisdom and those lessons learned in those experiences need to be taught to others who may or may not have gone through the same things or will go through those things. So don't negate for a second that your impact matters. Come alongside the guys that are presently in front of you. Look for those people that may need that brother or father figure. Don't hesitate to just listen and show up and be present. We have an opportunity to let the redemption of our own lives create a ripple effect. Let's get after it together. You guys are the best. Blessings.
We are back with part 2 of Finding Your Protege. In the first part, we kind of talked about the process of mentors or men going out and finding a protege to invest in. And I think here in part 2, we're going to kind of dive into questions of who do I invite and kind of how do I do it, and then also offer some practical advice as well. So yeah, we kind of talked about it a little bit in part 1, but who do I invite? This whole process is kind of investing in somebody that's already in your life. We talked about this circle of influence, and whoever you are out there, you have a circle of influence, whether it's small or large. So I think there's always an opportunity for you to find that man in your life, whether it's a family member, coworker, friend, somebody at church, maybe somebody that you're already in a small group with, or a men's ministry at your church with. So yeah, I mean, I think it's who has God put on your heart when you go through this process and think about it, and just kind of, I mean, I think a practical way to do it is to write down a list of maybe 5 guys in your circle of influence that you would want to approach about going through a mentorship together. We all have people in our lives that we can invest in. I think there's plenty of guys, like we had mentioned, there's plenty of guys out there who are craving this. They're craving somebody to come and walk alongside them, but they don't know how to initiate that or even get into that process. And how do I do that? I think first and foremost is just pray about it. Like I said, make that list, but make that an intentional time with God. Take a day, 2 days, a week to pray about that process, and we believe that God's going to reveal a name or maybe a couple names to you about who you can invite into this process of mentorship.
Yeah, I think that list and praying through a list is so key. Thinking about, and I think we said this before, this goes both ways. So if you're a mentor thinking about, I want to be intentional. All right, who are the guys that God has already placed in your life that you have a relationship? Because why we've talked about and seen the success is that there's already a relationship and trust built into warm relationships, rather than just blindly going to the grocery store and awkwardly tapping someone in the line that might, slug you.
That feels a little stalkerish.
Yeah. But finding someone that you already have a relationship and a history and a trust with, and there's something established, and both ways. So if you're a protege, or if you're looking for someone to mentor, thinking about guys in your life who already are a testimony and an example, and going, man, I the way he leads his family, the way he follows the Lord, the way he, think about men who have the values and centered on Christ that you already look up to and have a relationship with, and to say, yeah, I think, man, God, I want to put him on my list. I want to pray through that, and then go to the next step of approaching, which we can talk about that, because that can be awkward no matter what. Even if you're not tapping someone in the line at the grocery store, it can be kind of intimidating, right?
Yeah, I think we've, this approach to mentorship that we've kind of evolved into over the last year or so. I think we've, like I said, mentioned Mannheim Strong 27, our community initiative here locally, is we've seen it firsthand there be successful. And I think, and we'll get into this, I think for ourselves as well, like myself, I've seen it work in my own life, in my own mentorships, and I think you can speak into that as well.
Yeah, both the most recent mentorship that I went through where I was the protege, it was my senior pastor, and he came, and I remember he just kind of came up to me at a church function and said, hey, the Lord's been working on my heart and pulling me to pour into some leaders, young leaders in the church, and I was wondering if you'd be open to, I don't even, at that point, it wasn't a Strong 27 thing. It was just, I don't know what this looks like, but if you'd be interested, let me know.
Right.
And just as a comment on, it is kind of awkward to have that conversation because it's kind of weird. You're kind of throwing yourself out there. You're kind of asking, like, is this like it's almost like you're dating, in a strange way. And
asking them to prom.
Yeah. And I think, and you said it earlier, Steve, so many men actually do crave this.
Mm-hmm.
And I continue to tell men, you'd be surprised how many, the guys that you're thinking about talking to, they probably are already wondering and looking for it.
Yep.
And they just need someone to ask them.
Yep.
And even if they decide, hey, no, it's not for me, or I don't want to be your mentor, or I don't want to be your protege, whatever, it's still a huge honor. I mean, when my pastor came to me, this is someone who I look up to as an example for faith and leadership and family. For him to say, hey, I see something in you I would like to pour into.
Right.
Man, I was like, even if I said no or if I didn't have time, like, it was a huge honor and privilege to be asked.
Right.
And likewise, I think, if you go up to an older man or someone, maybe not older, but further along in their faith journey or family life and say, I see something in you I want to emulate. I want to learn from you. Mm-hmm. Would you consider mentoring me? Again, same thing. Huge honor, a huge privilege. And so even the conversation, even if it doesn't end up going into a formal mentorship, I think creates a lot of huge benefits and fruit. Just that conversation.
Yeah, I agree. I think about the mentorship I'm in right now with my buddy John is he approached me, 3 months ago, kind of out of the blue about if I'd be willing to mentor him and go through the Strong 27 process. And like you said, it's an honor for somebody to approach you and ask you that and talk about how, he sees this in you and that in you, and he wants that for his life, for his marriage or family or whatever. And yeah, I think in the same breath for the person who's, whether it's a guy asking his protege, for that protege, a guy, older and wiser and maybe a few seasons ahead of him in life that's coming and asking him to walk through this mentorship together. Why would you not want to be a part of that?
Yeah. And I think another thing I'd like to say on that is when you get into this place, and whether you're starting from a Strong 27 Men of Iron program or not, have a plan in place. Like I said, we're all discipling one another in some regard, whether we think about it or not. This is taking it to another step and being very intentional. Let's be purposeful. Let's make this a thing. Yeah. Can we meet regularly? Have some sort of plan in place. Don't just throw it out there with no thought to it. Obviously, we would promote Strong 27. Yeah. That's a great practical step to say, hey, I came across this Strong 27 program. Would you want to go through it with me? It's almost like a good excuse. It's a way of like kind of putting that out there as a reason for your ask. But have some sort of plan in place, and so whether it's Strong 27 or hey, let's start meeting regularly, it helps to have a game plan in place.
And this is a cheap plug, but you can go to menofiron.org/shop to get a Strong 27 starter kit. But I mean, honestly, at the heart of it, we want to see men grow and to really be that godly leader that God created them to be. So we're saying Strong 27 because that's what we do. But I mean, man, just get involved in mentorship and an authentic and real relationship with another man, and I think you're going to see transformation happen.
Yeah.
So we always have that guy that's messaging us and getting a hold of us that is looking to get into mentorship. So we know that guys are out there craving that, and we always our first step is always like finding out a little history about these guys, whether they're plugged into a church locally, if they have some, friends that they would consider going through a mentorship together, trying to get these guys plugged in and through this process of finding your mentor, finding your protege. But we always have, that one or two guys that they come back with this, well, I don't have anybody in my life like that. And it's such a tough question to answer, and I don't even know if we can provide that answer today, but how do we, as an organization, and how do we give guys practical advice who come back and say, I don't have anybody in my life like that?
Yeah, that's a really hard question because, as an organization, we are not a pool of mentors, and we're kind of, that's a little bit beyond our scope. And so it's tough. Like, if you're sitting down, you can't think of one guy prayerfully who you might approach. I think the next step is trying to figure out where to plug into some more community.
Yeah.
Are you plugged into a church, a local church? Finding a church is a big part of this, where you're built into a community of discipleship, of care, of centered on God's word. I mean, those things, then those relationships will be there. Yeah. And I think that would be my first, suggestion is, are you plugged into a church? And if you already are and you still say, I can't find a guy, are you plugged into the right things? Are there some things that you can get involved in, a small group, a men's ministry, something where you start to build that relationship, and that next step is, okay, I see a mentor coming out of this.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I think also, don't be afraid to even, we talk about this idea of asking a friend or a family member, coworker, but don't be afraid to ask somebody maybe who you don't know very well, but you see something in them that you wish you had in your life. Don't be afraid to ask that person either.
Yeah, it's good. All right. Well, hey, that's all the practical advice we can give. We're probably missing something, but
sure.
I think to kind of close before we wrap up is just to pray for all the guys listening in on this podcast, whether you're part of Men of Iron or not. We just want to close in prayer. God, we ask for your continued guidance and presence for all the men that are listening, Lord, that you would give them the wisdom and the vision to see who you're calling them to connect with, Lord. That you would give them the courage to take that step, to have that conversation, and to know that it's furthering their own growth in you, and it's furthering the kingdom just by having that conversation. So give them just clear vision as to who to approach, courage to take that next step, and then perseverance and commitment to stay the course after that mentorship begins, to really commit to growing in you and growing to know one another and their purpose. We thank you for all this. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Well, we thank you guys for listening and or watching today. You can find the Men of Iron podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify. The video version is on Facebook and YouTube, so we thank you guys for tuning in. We would love if you would take the time to leave us a review, whether it's on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening, and give us a little boost in visibility. We always love a good 5-star review.
5-star.
Thank you guys for listening. For more info on the Men of Iron podcast, you can go to menofiron.org/podcasts. Talk to you guys soon.
Peace. Thanks for listening to the Men of Iron podcast. To get started in a one-to-one or microgroup mentorship, go to menofiron.org.